Hello, hello, hello. Greetings and welcome to Storytime with Stephanie. I am your host, Stephanie Outen, and I am so glad to be with you all tonight. Storytime with Stephanie is a segment of the Writer's Anointing podcast, which you can catch on any of your major podcasting platforms. And you all know Storytime with Stephanie is an opportunity for me to be able to talk with up and coming authors, new authors, existing authors about the powerful stories that they've written and want to be able to share with the world. And tonight is no different. So tonight we have Brenda Webb Johnson with us, actually, Dr. Brenda Webb Johnson, and she is the author of Manic Love. And y'all, this love is manic for real. And this is a fiction story. And those of you who know me know I love, love, love fiction. I'm a fiction writer myself. And so anytime I have the opportunity to talk with fiction writers, it really just sparks joy in me. And so let me share a little bit about who Brenda is. Brenda Webb Johnson has a PhD in adult education and is licensed as a clinical social worker. She has worked in a variety of social work roles over the past 30 years of service to the Department of Veterans Affairs. She currently lives in the Tampa Bay area. And over the years, she has intentionally avoided working as a provider of mental health services. You'll learn more as we talk about her story. And instead, she chooses community outreach activities seeking to help other African American families learn how to get a proper diagnosis and treatment and live successfully with mental illness, the way her father has. The mental health system has indeed come a long way, but there are still great challenges in getting proper assistance for those in need. Brenda's a wife, mother, grandmother, and independent travel advisor with a passion for helping others. And she's going to be sharing all about that tonight. So there's so much about this dynamic woman that I want you all to know. And she's going to be joining us now. So, Brenda, are you with us?
I am. Hey,
Hello.
how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great.
Yes. So we are here to discuss your book, Manic Love. Y'all
Yeah.
see this? Manic Love. Whew. Now, Brenda. Now, because this is fiction, usually I will, when it's like nonfiction, I have like yellow sticky notes everywhere, right? But fiction, I just read because I get engrossed in the story. And I was totally engrossed in this particular story about Virginia and Franklin Hendricks. So, I want you to tell the audience just a little bit about kind of how this story came to be. What made you decide to write it, first of all? Because as I was reading it, I'm like, wow, this has to come from somewhere, right? And so I want you to share with the people where this story came from.
All right. So it was a long time coming. It's it's okay. So I didn't know about my father's mental illness until I was in college, and it was a abnormal psych class that I'm reading about bipolar. Well, it was manic depression back then. I think it was still in the 80s, still called manic depression. But that chapter on that disorder was where I kind of saw my father, and I called my mother and started asking questions. And she was just really quiet because she was kind of probably surprised, but she also said she didn't know how to talk to us about it. And
Mm.
so, but I think that opened the door for her to start talking to me more over the years. And
Yeah.
she actually wanted to get her story out there. So, book one is all about my mother's journey as a caregiver,
Okay.
right? So, it just took a long time to kind of make it, pull it together because although at first she wanted it to be kind of like a self-help kind of book, there was
Hmm.
just when I started doing the research and started trying to verify,
Yeah.
how that
Yeah.
goes. So it's inspired by her story, but we had
Okay.
to, you know,
Yeah.
make fictional.
Fictionalize some things. I fully understand. Yes. Yes.
Right.
So, what were some of the things that you had seen, some of the behaviors demonstrated by your father that when you were in that class, a light bulb went off?
So again, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you're
Mhm.
going through life thinking, okay, this ain't right, and the battles that we had as kids is like I
Yeah.
think some of it probably could have been avoided had we known, but
Mhm.
they weren't really educating families like that back then. But he would the moodiness, the temperamental, phases, the sleeping for days, the not sleeping for days.
Okay. Okay.
It goes back and forth. The impulsivity, spending.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much like your character, Franklin.
Right.
This character, and God love him. I mean,
Right.
they met at such a young age. Virginia and Franklin met. She was 19, right? And
Oh,
he 19? They were both 19 years old. And young love really enjoyed kind of those earlier parts of their lives. Had 5 children together. Really just tried to flourish as this African American family, 5 children, wanting to experience life together. And then things begin to happen that essentially dismantle, the dream life and family that they wanted to have. So tell us a little bit about that. And it can be as similar to your real life story as possible, or just,
mhm.
staying focused on the book. Tell us a little bit about that piece of their journey.
Apparently he was diagnosed or began having symptoms when I was born. So,
Mm.
so by the time I got to college, so the 20 years later, she's still silently dealing with that all alone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he's a preacher's kid, a mission. He called himself a missionary because he would reach out and basically preach in the streets, bringing people to Christ, bringing people into our house for Bible study. My mother was always, cooking meals and supporting all of that for him as a homemaker. She didn't go to work until I started school.
Okay.
So I think that journey, I think faith definitely is key
Yeah.
to my dad's successful walk through all of those years. I think that faith and treatment go together. And I think
Mm-hmm.
fortunately he was in the Air Force where he had access to good health care
Good.
and options. And so he
Mm-hmm.
tried so many different things over the years. He tried
Mm-hmm.
so many different medications. He's tried shock treatment. He's tried all of these different treatments. But
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like when he came to at peace with it, because I don't think he was always at peace with the diagnosis and
Mm-hmm.
accepting what he had to deal with. But when he
Yeah.
finally became at peace with it, I truly believe it was faith plus his he worked 2 jobs, he stayed busy, he served the community, he served others, he's helpful
Yeah.
to whoever, loved his family. So yeah.
It's so interesting, especially in reading the characters and how they were fleshed out. With Franklin, you see that he has a passion, right, for people. He's very compassionate, very caring,
Right.
and always wanting to give, always wanting to do more for others. And, part of that was probably from his upbringing as being a preacher's kid. But then another part of it is just innate. That's who he was born to be. But because of his mental illness, it kind of exaggerated those things for him. So he became overly compassionate, overly giving, and overly, doing things just beyond what anyone would imagine. And especially when you're not familiar with some of the mental disorders that people may face, you
Yeah.
might just say, like we say, man, that's just crazy, right? Like I was reading it and I know it's all about mental illness, and I'm like, but this is just crazy that
That's
this
the
man,
fix, right? So right?
my
So
God. But this was such a challenging disorder, not just for him, because it was almost like he was oblivious to the fact that he had an illness. He just thought this was who he was.
at
But
time.
his wife, Virginia, what she endured, right? Much like what your mother, I'm sure, endured. Virginia endured so much. And there were moments in reading this story where I was like, girl, if you don't just get up and go, like, I want you to go. I want you to leave because this is ridiculous.
And she
When
did not want to get to
and
that point.
no,
Yeah.
she did not. She did not want to leave. And I'm like, that is love at a whole different level because they had
Unconditional.
been,
Yeah.
what, say it again?
Unconditional.
Oh my God. It was truly unconditional because no matter what he did, she stayed and she cared for him and she loved him. even when he didn't allow her to kind of have a life for herself, when she wanted to go to school and when she wanted to work and when she wanted to do some things for herself, he was not happy about that. He really wanted her to spend her life really just taking care of him and their family. Was that much like what was going on in your own household growing up?
I didn't know that until later, but yeah, she confided later. But then, you look back and you get those subtle messages, right?
Mm.
I think she was preparing me never to do that, you know,
Uh, yeah.
to be that independent person, to be that, go get
Yeah.
your education, go get your own job, have your own money, don't depend on anyone. All of those messages that I would hear, but I never connected the dots until
Yeah.
later.
And you can see that in the story too, because she was
Right,
very much like that with her kids. She was like,
right,
especially her daughter, especially the youngest daughter too. It's like,
right.
don't you do that, right? Um, but there were some things that were very painful to read, in the story, especially where it came to the financial challenges that Virginia was met with because of, Franklin's overgiving and overspending and really putting them in such a compromising position. I mean, it was, again, I was like, girl, look, Virginia, I want to crawl into this book and snatch you out of this situation. And so many women, I think, because we love from a deep, deep place, we
Right.
want to do everything to support that person, even to our own detriment, because she was struggling from day to day trying to figure out how am I going to pay the bills because this man was draining the bank account every minute, right?
Right. I
And
remember she was a caregiver till the youngest went to school. So
oh
she
goodness,
was dependent. And so, but trying to manage that and in a traditional marriage, back then the husband ran pretty much the house and
yes, yes.
he was in a tough spot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was you know, you did not give too much. You did give parts of like each child's, walk through this journey, right? And so with them having 5 kids, you shared, how each of them kind of managed and grappled with their own life and the things that they wanted to do. And some of them went off and left and, left pretty early. And some of them, were there to the end, like the youngest, there all the way through. What was that like? Because I'm assuming that that kind of plays into your own personal life with your own siblings as well. What was that like for each of you, just growing up in that household and really not fully understanding what was happening, loving your father, but
Yeah.
desiring to be free? What was
That's
that like?
I can't really speak for them, honestly. I don't we talk about it and after this book, I think a couple of them read it and started understanding a little more, but that self-stigma is still people this is a hard conversation. People don't
Mhm,
want to talk about it. And
mhm.
they don't want to personalize it and they don't want to expose and they don't, you
Yeah,
know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
there's so much emotion associated with being having this what that subtitle, the unwanted inheritance. There's nothing I
yes.
can do about it. There's nothing any of us can do about it. It is what we were
Mhm.
dealt. But as far as that, just looking back, it's like I just think we would have done things differently had we known, had
Yeah,
we been able to be that support growing up, had we been able,
absolutely.
make sense of what we were seeing and feeling.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for those of you who are joining us, thank you for joining us. We're here with Dr. Brenda Webb Johnson, and we're talking about her awesome book, this awesome story, Manic Love, which is inspired by her own true story of her father's own mental illness. And what I want to ask, because this book, it starts out with a bang. The prologue is called Daddy's Dead. And I was like, Lord, who got killed? Like right at the beginning of this story. And so what we learn is that Franklin's father, who was the preacher, very well known, very big in the church, known across his community and even outside the community. And Franklin's own mother dealt with mental illness, was actually schizophrenic. And what we learn is that through this story, what they don't want to, share is that she murders her husband. Did that actually happen? Or did
So
you
again,
fictionalize
this is
that?
a fictional account.
Okay, because I was like, oh God. I
So the
was like,
story, the
oh,
stories you hear growing up,
yes,
you hear these stories, but then when you start researching it and go looking at the death certificates and all of that, that's,
yeah,
it's a little different. So
yeah.
that's how the story rolls out that,
Ah,
yeah. So
oh,
half of the people that have a diagnosable mental illness don't get treatment.
yeah,
And so it's living with conditions like schizophrenia or bipolar with treatment are no more violent than any other
y-
condition, right?
yes,
So we have
yeah,
anything else. So I don't want to contribute to the stigma
yes,
by saying
absolutely.
that's the fate. So, but that is the stories that we heard over the years. But there's no,
No,
you
no real evidence of that happening.
right,
Yeah, and the unfortunate part is that so many of us in the African American community, even today, 2023, right? This is still a stigma. And you
absolutely,
have the shirt on that says fight the stigma,
yes,
right? Fight the stigma because mental illness is real. And we don't want to live in a world where we can't talk about it,
right,
where we can't say, this person is bipolar or schizophrenic without fear of, oh my God, especially if it's in your own family. Oh my God, is that going to be me? Right? Am I going to get that? And then you have friends or you get in relationships and they think, oh, well, your mother was schizophrenic. Does that mean you're going to be schizophrenic? Right? We don't know. But
right.
like you said, with treatment, first of all, the right diagnosis is important,
Yes, that
right?
part.
And treatment is then the next step that allows that individual to be able to live a regular life. I don't want to call it normal because these days, what do you
Going
call
on,
normal?
right, no, right. We all have something going on, right?
Yes. So tell us what it is that you are doing, especially because of what you faced, what you grew up in, not fully understanding it until later in life.
Mhm.
Tell us what it is that you do now to help fight the stigma
Okay.
and to support other African American families in understanding how to manage through these types of mental illness diagnoses.
So I think stigma is a lack of understanding,
Mhm.
right? So discrimination, bias, all of that. And we face it so much in America with so many other ways. But when it comes to mental health, there's confusion about the difference between mental health and mental illness. So
Mhm.
we try to help clarify that.
Ooh, so tell us, clarify.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everyone needs to be concerned about their mental health. That's about how we function, how we deal with stress, how we function in our day to day, how we just live our life, right?
Mhm.
But mental illness is biologically based. It's a brain disorder. It's just
Mhm.
like how diabetes affects our pancreas. Well, mental
Yes.
illness affects our brain. So if you're not gonna not take medication for diabetes, and I'm not saying that medication is the only way to treat mental illness,
Right.
but it is definitely one of the options for successful treatment.
Yes.
So we, I do, I try to, my whole life right now is kind of centered around my passion for this. So when I'm serving in my sorority, I'm working on physical and mental health committee, and we're working on events that kind of help with reducing stigma and reducing stigma by raising awareness. So
Mm.
raising awareness sometimes means sharing your story. So writing that book is part of my mental illness awareness. We're
Okay.
serving in my church. We have a mental health ministry in our church, Bible-based fellowship on Ehrlich,
Mhm.
and that is one of the best churches in Tampa. By
I used to go there a long, long, long time ago.
well, so, so our mental health ministry does small group classes that connects the Bible to mental health.
Mm.
We do. If we just had a forum last week, we had this beautiful panel that talked about advocacy, family education, medications, working with your healthcare providers. We had uh, a, an individual with a lived experience sharing her story, and it was so
Awesome.
moving. So we do that. We have me and another facilitator in my church. Teach mental health first aid 3 times a year for the church. So
Okay.
when you finish that class, you get certified as a mental health first aider. And
Mhm.
that's part of that whole mission of our mental health ministry. So people don't come into the doors feeling different or isolated or targeted or mistreated or anything like that. We're trying to raise that sensitivity and understanding on how to triage and refer accordingly.
Okay.
So doing that through the church. So, and then personally with the book and trying to just, raise awareness and call attention to things that are going on as I see it, because some people do it, they don't realize what they're doing. I think when you're being stigmatizing, when you're being disrespectful or being, making a joke about somebody's situation, and it's not funny, and I don't want to see anyone crying in the dark, basically suffering in silence. That's the worst place to be when you're dealing with not only a loved one, maybe, or your own, or, just the stress of life. So everyone should be supported just the way you would any other kind of challenge or health crisis.
Absolutely. And I think that so many times, because it is not physical,
you don't see it.
We don't see it unless behaviors start to come out, but we don't see it. And the person is not, maybe disabled and in the bed and can't move, or has, physical ailments, that it doesn't exist.
Right.
But it is rampant.
Yes, it is. It seems to be growing, doesn't it?
It is absolutely growing.
Yeah.
And one thing that I have found, and if anyone has any questions, feel free. I want you to share this out. Share this out on your pages. Let everyone know that I'm here with Storytime with Stephanie, with Dr. Brenda Webb Johnson, and we're discussing her book, Manic Love, which I got to show it, her book, Manic Love. But we're also talking about mental health awareness and mental illness, and making sure that your loved ones, those that you encounter, have the right level of support, that, they are given opportunities to get the right diagnosis, that they are given opportunities for the right treatment. So share this out, because this is a critical time that we're in. And even now, I was actually just talking to my brother earlier today, and we were just talking about the number of mass shootings that are happening constantly. Every day we're hearing about another mass shooting. And one of the things that sometimes bothers me is that it's like blamed on mental illness, right? It's just probably some mental illness, when this person has probably never been diagnosed with any form of mental illness whatsoever, right? So like you said, it's almost like it's becoming a joke in this time where nothing is a joke. There are lives being taken every single day because people are troubled, not necessarily mentally ill, but troubled, right? Disturbed in their souls, right? I say they need Jesus all day long, because there's no way that we can attribute all of this to mental illness. And I see that some comments are starting to come up and some questions are coming up, and we'll share those along the conversation. But it's Cassandra that says, is it really growing, or is it that people are more aware and not afraid to speak of it out loud? All right, Dr. Brenda, what do you think?
That's my sister, by the way.
Well, thank you, sister.
So yes, I do. The more we raise awareness, the more people start talking about it, the more we start offering support, the more we start understanding it, it does make it easier for people to talk about it out loud. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a great question. Thank you so much for that. And feel free to ask any more questions, share your comments, because we are talking about a very difficult subject. And especially in African-American households, we already know, not even just about mental illness, but just anything that happens in your household. What happens in this house stays in this house, right? We just don't talk about things.
Right.
We don't like to uproot things. We don't want people in our business, right? And what happens when you do that? When you hold everything a secret and you don't share, right? You grow into these miserable, people who have so many soul wounds that are just bleeding, and you're bleeding on everyone else because you didn't get an opportunity to talk about it. And what are some of the ways, Brenda, that families can begin to have the discussion if they even notice that something is off, something feels different about the behaviors of a loved one, and they want to support that person and encourage that person without making them without traumatizing them by saying, hey, something's wrong with you. how can they support and really help that person understand that it's out of love that they want to get them some help?
First and foremost, you assess for safety. You make sure that there is nothing going on that's leading towards you know, a deeper darkness or suicidal ideations. You start asking questions and you start offering support. You help make appointments if you need to. You
Mhm.
sit with them. You talk to like get them to talk. There's a lot of barriers to getting proper care and finding the right counselor, but helping through that process and encouraging not to stop or give up just because you didn't like that first one or the first med didn't work. Um, but educating yourself is key to really
Mhm.
being the best support person you can. It's also one of the best ways to help you with your own struggles that you notice that things aren't going right.
Mhm.
Uh, you know what I mean? So it's not like the everyday like, oh, I had a bad day at work because of this or that. This is like, okay, everything's going great, but yet I have this darkness and I can't seem to shake it off. You
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
because people
Yes.
tell you just shake it off, just get up and it's not always that simple, but
Right.
so but having relationships, you start noticing when
Mhm.
things aren't the same or something's a little off or you see something different in their eyes. And
Yes.
I think instead of being afraid to say anything, out of love, approach
Mhm.
and start that conversation and see
Mhm.
how you can be a support.
That's so good. I actually was just like I think I was listening to another book the other day where one of the individuals in the story was battling depression and ended up, attempting suicide in the book. And their two friends were like just shocked. Like, how did we miss this? How did we
Hmm.
miss this? Right? Because the other friend was just always jovial, was always,
Yes.
like nothing phased her, but something happened and she just hit rock bottom and she was down for the count and decided that my life is no longer worth living. Right?
Hmm.
Here it is. These are her two closest friends, grew up with her, have been around her, spend so much time with her. What do you think are some of the things that cause people to miss the signs that there's trouble with a loved one?
Maybe true full engagement,
Mm,
because I think there are some passive signs. When I'm teaching mental health first aid, I often share the story of my prior supervisor who committed suicide.
mm,
And she was a bright, intelligent, rising star in our hospital, right? So it kind of took everyone for a loop. But
mm,
then, when I'm going through the warning signs that and I don't have it in front of me, but I can identify she
mm.
did demonstrate these things. I just
Wow.
wasn't looking at it through that lens, you know,
Wow. Wow.
paying close enough attention to the specifics, you know what I mean? So, and
Mm,
again, if you don't re you really if you're really engaged and have relationships with individuals, you may not be as surprised as you think, right? If you think back and look closely at what
yeah.
they might have passively been saying or passively been doing or
Hmm.
just shelved or, a little more distant and
Yeah.
withdrawn and
Mm.
yeah.
We always hear that saying, like, check on your strong friends, but it goes beyond that from what you say. You said it's not just checking on us, it's engaging.
Engage.
Engage with your strong friends because engaging allows you to see beyond the surface,
Yes.
right? It allows you to see that there might be trouble brewing and you could be the very person that cuts that trouble off at the pass,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So really be actively engaged. We're all busy,
Yes.
unfortunately.
And
We
always and this there, right? So fast.
always, yeah, everything. We literally live in a microwave society. Everything is like bam, 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 happening so quickly. But
Right.
if you just take a moment out to call that person and really listen, right? If you're physically in the places where you can get together, spend a little
Right.
bit of extra time together to really see
Mhm.
see
Right.
that person and spend time getting to observe their behaviors and mannerism, the words that are coming out of their mouth, because it could be that very interaction that you have with them that helps to determine
Absolutely.
that something's wrong, right?
Absolutely.
And so, in the work that you do, especially out in the community with educating African American families and making sure they understand how to support, how what's the best way to say this? How often have you seen families kind of disengage from it, or like not want to take in the information that you're sharing with them because they're so closed-minded to the thought that it could actually be true mental illness?
I think that's regular. That's common. And you know, in our, like when I mentioned in the sorority, we used to do these in Delta Sigma Theta, Tampa Alumni Chapter, and we used to do like forums, right? We'd have all these great speakers coming in, all this information, and nobody would come,
Mm,
right? Or a few would come. So it's just so now we've been doing this event that's focusing more on like the artistic expression, and that's been more well received by the community. And I
okay.
think it's because it's less threatening. But we're still talking about, each poet is talking about mental health.
Wow.
Each vendor has something related to wellness or
Mhm.
mental health. So I don't know if it's just less threatening, but as far as the conversations about it, that's where, you know, we're not putting people on the spot. We're trying to educate, raise awareness, share stories, share information so that you know where to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know how to get what you need. But
Yeah.
even in general, I remember trying to approach, if I notice something about someone or try to talk to someone, people are kind of resistant to have that conversation. And I get it. They don't really know me like that.
Yeah.
So, but I
Yeah.
do think it's too important to ignore.
It's yeah, way too important to ignore. I want to jump back to the story for a second,
Okay.
because there are some there is just a section in here that honestly I was laughing at some points but fully disturbed all at the same time, right? And it's because Franklin, the one of the main characters, Franklin, again, he was overly giving,
Yes.
and he decided that he was going to furnish this one of his coworkers. He was going to furnish her entire house with he and Virginia's money. Just all the money in their bank account, every credit card he could open, right? If he could find a dime under a couch, he was going to use it to help this woman who was a single mom to be able to furnish this place where where she was going to live. And honestly, reading it, you crack up because you're like, this is not real. Like this cannot be happening. And it was consistently happening. That was the problem. Like every time Virginia would figure it out, and she would try to shut down the Sears card, and she would try to keep the furniture from being delivered, and she tried everything. Like he would just open up a whole nother card and like keep buying this woman furniture. And there,
Right.
from the way the story is written, there's no relationship. Like he's not having
No.
an affair with this woman. He just
Coworker.
It's just his coworker who's a single mom down on her luck, and he is like, I just want to help.
Right.
And Virginia is like, your helping is like putting us into the poorhouse, right? And this poor woman is spending day and night trying to figure out how to shut down credit cards and lock out her bank account. And honestly, I cracked up, but I was so frustrated all at the same time,
Right.
because again, this is a different time where this story is happening, right? I think
Right.
we as women today would be like, I'm out. I cannot, I can't deal with this, right?
Right.
Because the stress alone would kill you. The
Yes.
stress alone of being a caregiver can really wear you out. I am a caregiver, right? So I fully understand how the stress
Yeah.
of being a caregiver can wear you down. But this woman, Virginia, no matter what Franklin did, no matter what, like she still loved him through it. And yes, she was upset, and yes, she was frustrated. And there were times where she was actually scared, because she was like, I don't she would come home, and even though he had moved out, she would come home and he'd be laying in the bed. And you're like, wait, what? How did he even get in the house? Like Virginia changed the locks, and then she did. And so I love that you were able to, not that you intentionally put humor in here, but it became humorous because something this serious, if you don't laugh, you will ball up in the corner somewhere and cry all day long.
Right.
Because I felt so much pain for Virginia. I literally was like, I want to cry for this woman
Yeah.
because one, being a caregiver and knowing how hard it is, and because my mother has dementia, and that's a mind-binding illness right there in and of itself.
Right.
And to know what this woman was going through,
Mm-hmm.
yet hmm, she never dishonored him. She never spoke negatively about him. She had opportunities where her family was there, and she's never discredited him in front of her family. She truly showed unconditional love. I imagine that is exactly how your mother was.
To the end.
Yeah.
Yes. She was
Now,
like itty bitty, 5'4", maybe. Strongest person I know, but it's quiet strength, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that quiet strength. Now, this is book one. I heard you say that.
Yes.
So I know that there is another story coming.
So it's
Can you,
funny. Yeah.
what were you going to say?
I was just gonna say, so my mom passed before this was published, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But dad read it. And so
Oh,
dad read it. He said, well, I want to tell my story.
oh, okay. Okay. Oh, I'm excited.
So he passed about a little over a year ago, and but I got the opportunity to spend several about 3 weeks of interview time, and it took me in a totally different direction though, because I thought it was going to be more like similar to this, but from that perspective of the person who's living with
Yeah.
the condition.
Yeah.
But now he shared stuff I didn't know. So
Oh, whoa. Okay.
take it back even further and look at childhood trauma for
Yeah.
the
Ooh.
yes.
See, there it is. We got to get to the root
You're
of
right.
things. There's always a root to things, right?
Right.
And so he's taking you back to the root, or he took you back to the root.
Yes. And
Oh,
it's been really tough because now it's a whole nother, and I'm back in that research phase, and I'm back in, putting the pieces together and trying to make, because so it's fiction, but I tried to put the educational pieces in there to help people
yes.
understand the reality of what people
Yes.
are dealing with. And so now I've never worked with children, so this is going to be a new
Oh.
experience for me.
Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
did a great job of that in Manic Love, the first book. You were able to weave in some of the educational pieces. I don't remember it off the top, but there was one section where you inserted like some educational pieces, and I was like, man, like I didn't even know that,
Right.
right? And I
And a
think
lot,
that is so important.
right. And the faith piece. So I also interjected stories from the
Yes.
Bible in there, and
Yes,
because I'm telling you, faith is a crucial piece of recovery.
it
And
is.
so,
It is. And what I loved about Franklin's character was that he was a man of faith. Like, and
absolutely.
it just goes to show that we can be people of faith and still deal with mental illness.
No
And
discrimination. 1 in 5. It don't matter who you are, where you are, what you
yeah, it'll come for you.
yeah.
It will come for
How much
you.
money you make, no, none of that. So you don't know where it's gonna pop up.
You have no idea. And you can pray, and we encourage prayer. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And your faith can strengthen you on those days where it feels extremely dark. But get help. Like,
Yes.
get help.
Figure
It
out
is,
what works for you.
yes. Do what works for you. It is okay to say, I have a mental illness. It is okay to take the
Mhm.
medication if the doctor prescribes it. It is okay, right, to share and talk with other people, because you never know when you sharing about your own diagnosis can help someone else, right? And
Yeah.
so I appreciate that you wrote this book. I appreciate how you weaved your own personal story into this, and you weaved in the educational pieces so that we could be informed, right? That this is something that is impacting families people's lives everywhere, every day. And we just have to be willing to raise our hands to say, I need help. And those in your family need to be willing to say, I'm going to get you that help.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm going to get you that help. And so I want you, and this has been such a fantastic conversation, Brenda. And Brenda said she was nervous, y'all. Brenda is amazing. Like, she's so poised and just so eloquent in how she shared this information. And I just love it. And you have to get this book, because it is eye-opening. It really is. It is a book that awakens you to the fact that mental illness is so real, and it really can destroy families. It can destroy families, and you don't want it to destroy your family. So if there's anyone who is struggling, if you have a family, and whether you're watching live or you watch on the replay, you watch on the podcast, whatever, if you are struggling yourself, or you have a family member that you believe may have some form of mental illness and will not seek help, start to ask the right questions. But Brenda, are there ways that people can reach out to you? I know we're running your website across the screen. It's maniclovebooks.com, maniclovebooks with an S at the end.com, because that means there's more than one book. So the other one is forthcoming. You can connect with Brenda on Instagram at bwebj, or Facebook at brenda.w.johnson. Okay. You can connect with Brenda, because whether she is the person or not, to be able to support you, she has access to a wealth of resources to help you. So what are some of the things that you would like to share, Brenda, with individuals who say, hey, I do want to reach out to you, Brenda. I might be, facing some challenges myself, or I have a loved one. What are some words of encouragement that you would share to support that person?
So on maniclovebooks.com, there's also a resource section. So there are resources there. But yeah, that's what I feel like I'm part of my mission here. So feel free to reach out, but don't isolate. Don't keep it to yourself. Find a trusted friend or find a counselor. I mean, there's so many online counselors now. So just don't cry in the dark. Just learn all you can. Reach out, ask for help. It's okay not to be okay. Take care of yourself physically as well. Your self-care is not selfish. So do take care of yourself and exercise, eat right. But also, if you need that extra help, even if you want to start with your medical doctor, they can help at some level as well. So don't ignore, don't allow bridges to burn and your life to just not be where you want to be. So too short and too precious. So
I love that. And Professor Maria Evans says, and you're not alone in this. Absolutely. People need to know that they're not alone. There's a multitude of people facing mental illness. You are not the only one.
Right.
You're not the only one. And so when people can come together, Mariah, is that her name? Mariah, I'm so sorry for messing up your name. Forgive me. But there's a multitude of people facing the same issues that you might be. And so there's resources, there's support for you. And so I thank Dr. Brenda Webb Johnson. I'm so honored that you came to talk with us about this book. I've heard you say, don't cry in the dark. And that's a saying that we hear a lot. And I'm like, is that the title for book 2? Is that? No. Are you giving us a little hint?
That was actually a national initiative from Delta, actually. So that's kind of how those events started. But it's so true, though. People do cry in the dark. And that's
absolutely.
I want that to continue. Nobody should have to cry in the dark. So.
Absolutely. So
and I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and all the help. You gave me a lot of support through this whole journey after finishing this book, and I appreciate you greatly.
Well, I'm honored. And hey, I'll be here for book 2 as well. So if you need me, I'm right here for you. But thank you, Dr. Brenda Webb Johnson, the author of Manic Love: An Unwanted Inheritance of Mental Illness. A powerful story that you have to read, share, talk about it. Like literally, I encourage you all to like, I don't know if they still exist because I used to be part of a book club a long, long time ago.
They
And book clubs need to come back.
They're back.
Yeah,
I've actually participated in several already.
awesome,
So,
awesome. So the rebirth of the book clubs, because books like this are necessary. Books like this need to be read. Books like this need to be shared and talked about. Um, and so, oh, Brenda, look at that. I heard a word for you.
what?
Um, that in your next book, having like the book club, the section, the book club
Yeah.
questions.
You're right.
Yes, that people can do and read and talk about because it's so necessary. So I think I see more comments. They're popping up. Yeah, she said they made a comeback during COVID. That is so true. And they were like virtual book clubs because people had nothing to do but read.
Right.
You're right. You're right. People had nothing to do but read. I know I was reading a lot too. So I thank you. I thank you so much, Brenda. This has been a powerful story time with Stephanie, a topic that was much needed um, during Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah.
But a conversation, fight the stigma, yes, but a conversation that we need to be having every single day. So if you or a loved one is facing mental illness, concerned about your mental health, feel like you want to go cry in the dark, check out www.manicbooks.com. I'm so sorry. Manic Love Books, maniclovebooks.com for the resources that Brenda has made available. Again, she can be reached through social media, Facebook, right, as well as Instagram. We are running it across the screen, so those of you watching the replay can grab it there. We'll also put it in the comments for tonight's show as well. But go to maniclovebooks.com for the resources. It's going to be very helpful for you. You can also reach out to Dr. Brenda Webb Johnson directly. Brenda, anything else that you have coming up that you want to share with individuals? Anything new and exciting that you're doing? You're also you have a travel agency as well, so you have that going on. Brenda is multifaceted. You hear me? This one, I don't know when she sleeps.
Connect everything to mental health awareness, right? So now I got to figure out how to connect the travel piece. I'm working on that.
Self-care, traveling,
wellness, right? So yes. Wellness, but
that's right.
But in June, our church will be having another class opportunity for two things. So we have it's not like, what do you call it? Vacation Bible School, but for adults. But it's that we're having a class. So okay. I'll be posting that when we get the more information on that, as well as we'll be doing another session of our mental health first aid in June. And then again in October. So October is Mental Illness Awareness Week, the first week of October. So stay tuned for things like that. So.
Excellent. When you post that, tag me. We'll share it on this page as well so that it's attached to your interview, and we'll share it so that people are aware and can participate, because we want people to have as much access to education and information as possible. So thank you so much, Dr. Brenda Webb Johnson, and thank you all for joining us tonight. Family, friends, again, share this out. Post it on your pages so that others can go back and hear this powerful story from Dr. Brenda Webb Johnson, the author of Manic Love. It's been an awesome time. It's been my pleasure. Thank you all so much. And we'll see you for the next story time with Stephanie. Good night.